On yesterday's show, I was dealing with an article that Dan Wallace had written about changes at Dallas Theological Seminary. Changes, he said, took place really 25 years ago, moving from more of the Schofield variety of dispensationalism to the more progressive side of dispensationalism, which Darrell Bock and Craig Blazing have articulated in a number of books that have been published, although I haven't seen much recently on the progressive dispensationalist side. I know that a book on historic premillennialism has been published by Baker Bookhouse, and the authors make it, it's kind of a funny statement. They said they probably won't get much of a hearing on the historic premillennialism because it doesn't have the sensationalism that dispensational premillennialism has. And Dan Wallace made the comment that it seems that the liberal side of scholarship has not really taken note of the changes that have taken place at Dallas Theological Seminary, that has moved away from the Schofield variety of dispensationalism into progressive dispensationalism, and no longer sees such a distinction between the church and Israel. And I wonder if Dr. Wallace realizes, and I'm sure he does, that there are lots of people, lots of dispensationalists who have not seen the change that has taken place at Dallas Theological Seminary. And they would be pretty upset with the changes and say that Dallas Seminary has gone, if not liberal, has certainly gone outside the perspective that has sustained their movement for so many years. And let me give you an example of this. I get emails again from people all the time, and got an email from a couple asking me if I would respond to an article that was written by Dr. Robert Heidler. Dr. Heidler graduated with honors from Dallas Theological Seminary in 1978 with a THM in New Testament Literature and Exegesis. And the title of the article is "Preterist Interpretation of Revelation Will Lead to Problems." And let me just go through some of these, because I think, again, here's a man who has all of the tools that Dallas Seminary gives their students. And again, I would not dismiss the scholarship of those who teach at Dallas Theological Seminary and those students who come out of there. You do get the theological tools necessary in order to do exegetical work. There's no dispute there, at least not for me. Anyway, he goes on and he says, as one who has spent many years in a detailed study of the Bible in the original Greek and Hebrew languages, I am concerned by attempts to promote long discredited preterist theology by a few members of the current apostolic movement. I don't know what the apostolic movement is. That's not my issue here. It's a number of things that Robert Heidler says about preterism. Preterism teaches that the majority of Old Testament and New Testament prophetic texts have already been fulfilled. They were prophetic when they were given. Since they have been fulfilled, the fulfillment is in the past, thus a preterist interpretation. I'll talk more about that, and if you want more information about my views on this, you can get my books, Last Days Madness, Is Jesus Coming Soon?, Why the End of the World is Not in Your Future, which is an exposition of Old Testament passages, Ezekiel 38 and 39 and Zechariah 12, and The Early Church and the End of the World, which deals with this perspective from a historical perspective, which is part of this argument here. He goes on to say, the preterist view teaches that the events described in the book of Revelation are not future events, but descriptions of events that took place within the first century. Now, keep in mind that if you study the history of biblical interpretation, you will find that prior to maybe 1830s, 1850s, expositions on the book of Revelation, not a single exposition on the book of Revelation can be found prior to the 19th century that had anything to do with a dispensational interpretation of the Bible. You will not find dispensationalism in any form being taught prior to the 19th century. And so to claim that preterism is unhistorical and that it's just outside the purview of evangelical theology is just plain nonsense. The book of Revelation has mostly been interpreted in a historicist way. and that is that the book of Revelation supposedly teaches the whole umbrella of history, starting from the first century and going all the way to the future, and that certain parts of history, the Reformation can be found, the rise of Islam can be found all in the book of Revelation. That has been the most popular view of reading and interpreting the book of Revelation. It has not preterism, neither preterism nor dispensationalism has much of a history regarding the book of Revelation, although you will find some preterist interpretations of the book of Revelation, although you won't find any dispensational interpretations of the book of Revelation. Now, Mr. Heidler goes on to say, from my perspective, the preterist view is an unfortunate distortion of dominion theology that violates every rule of Bible interpretation. So he's claiming that a preterist interpretation of the Bible violates every rule of Bible interpretation. I'd like to sit down with Mr. Heidler and actually ask him some specifics, and since he probably won't do it, and I'll deal with some of these things that he says violates every rule of Bible interpretation. He goes on, preterist interpretation of the book of Revelation blatantly ignores the clear statements of the text that the book is a description of end-time events. There is nothing in the book of Revelation to even remotely suggest the preterist view. It is clearly an idea read into the text. Well, let's put those arguments to the test. And let's start with, well, I think we ought to start with the very first verse in the book of Revelation. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show to his bondservants the things which must shortly take place. And he sent and communicated it by his angel to his bondservant John. So the very first verse tells us that the events in the book of Revelation are to take place shortly. Now, since the dispensational view teaches that the book of Revelation, the majority of the events in the book of Revelation from chapter 4 onward have not taken place yet, then the burden of proof is on the dispensationalists to show why the word shortly is used here, and yet it doesn't really mean shortly. And the third verse says, blessed is he who reads and those who hear the words of the prophecy and heed the things which are written in it, for the time is near. Each and every time the words shortly and near are used in the New Testament, they always refer to events that are near and shortly to take place. In fact, if you look at Revelation chapter 22, verse 10, and the angel said to John, do not seal up the words of the prophecy of this book, for the time is near. Now you compare that statement with what Daniel is told in the book of Daniel, to seal up the prophecy, because the unfolding of all this is many years in the future. John is told, don't seal up the prophecy, because that particular this prophecy is going to unfold in a very short period of time. And then you look at Revelation chapter 11, and you will see in Revelation chapter 11 that the temple is still standing, and there was given me a measuring rod and staff, and someone said, rise and measure the temple and the altar and those who worship in it, and leave out the outer court, which is outside the temple, and do not measure it, for it has been given to the nations, and they will tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. So, we're told that the events in the book of Revelation are to take place shortly. The time is near. We're told that the temple was still standing when the book of Revelation was written. And since the temple, we know for a fact, was destroyed in AD 70, and we also know that there is not a single verse in the entire New Testament that says anything about a rebuilt temple. The temple that was standing and written about in Revelation chapter 11 was the temple that Jesus was in, that Jesus cleansed and said that would be destroyed within a generation. In tomorrow's show, I'm going to continue this and deal with some of the other arguments made by this individual.